The defense wanted to propose a question on, after the potential jurors filled out their questionnaire, have they seen any news media, any documentaries, anything just relating to a news medium, and whether or not they saw it in between them filling out the questionnaire to Monday morning when they saw, or when they go to jury.
Sean Diddy Combs, the once untouchable music mogul, may walk free this fall, and the world is watching in disbelief. After everything that has come out, after years of whispered stories that finally spilled into courtrooms and headlines, the thought that he could stroll out of prison with his empire waiting for him is almost surreal. The courts cleared him of the most serious racketeering and trafficking charges, yet those images of him in hotel hallways, the testimonies of women describing being controlled and humiliated, they linger. And now, instead of the long stretch behind bars that prosecutors once demanded, his team is fighting to whittle it down to almost nothing. If the judge agrees, he could be home in time for the holidays, a prospect that feels like celebration in his camp and pure betrayal for his accusers.
And I think when it came to, it's not just the more serious charges, but it's the more complex charges, where the jury, in order to, for instance, find guilt on the racketeering charge, was going to have to find not just that Sean Combs had kicked his girlfriend, had beat people up, had engaged in truly abhorrent behavior, but that he ran a criminal.
The fury among the survivors is impossible to ignore. Cassie Ventura, who stood on that witness stand and described a decade of control, substances, and so-called freakoffs that left her broken, was already a symbol of resistance when she confronted him in court. Others followed her lead, some hidden behind pseudonyms, their voices trembling but firm as they told jurors about being flown across the country and dragged into his twisted lifestyle. They believed that by testifying, by reliving the worst nights of their lives, they were securing justice. And yet, here we are with prosecutors' warning of overwhelming evidence, but a system that somehow still feels tilted. The anger is building like a rising tide, with survivors demanding to be heard, demanding that the conviction lead to consequences, not a cushioned escape hatch. In contrast, the mood inside his circle is almost giddy. We've seen the smiles outside the courthouse, the statements about a great victory for Sean Combs, the quiet confidence that money and influence will once again do what they've always done for him. To them, the fall verdict is a minor obstacle, not a downfall. They whisper about his return as if it's already guaranteed, making plans for relaunch parties and business moves, treating the whole trial like an annoying pause in the soundtrack of his career. That joy, that smugness, is gasoline on the fire for those who still carry scars, physical and emotional, from their time under his shadow. Behind the scenes, the rumors are darker. Industry insiders insist that many of the witnesses who might have tipped the scales simply vanished. Some withdrew from testifying, others went quiet overnight. And the whispers say it wasn't nerves, it was payoffs. Shadowy wire transfers, cash that moved quietly offshore, settlements sealed with NDAs, all arranged at the 11th hour. Could the truth about Diddy's crimes have been buried under a mountain of money? When accusers risk everything to speak and then are drowned in offers they can't refuse, what does that say about the kind of justice money can buy? We have to ask ourselves, when influence is this deep, does truth ever really stand a chance?
So we just got this new audio from the Diddy trial, and it is pretty explosive. This is audio of a voicemail that Diddy left to the Jane Doe who's been testifying in this trial for the last couple days. And he sounds really annoyed. He's talking about her maybe giving him the silent treatment. And his response is, I got a busy life. I can't be dealing with your silent treatment. And we got to keep it.
Take Virginia Gina Quinn. Once identified only as victim 3, she was expected to testify against him. She was in the indictment. She was ready to step forward. And then, suddenly, she wasn't. Instead, she submitted a letter to the judge pleading for his release, saying he had changed, that he was gentle, that he deserved to be free for his children. To the victims watching, it felt like betrayal. To others, it looked like a textbook example of influence at work. Was it her choice? Was it pressure? Or was it something more calculated, a strategic move engineered from within his camp to soften the image of a man accused of orchestrating the worst kind of excess? We can't prove what happened, but the timing is enough to fuel suspicion that silence comes at a steep price.
Trying to find her, and her attorney has said that she may not be willing to come and testify anyway, so
be interesting. Okay, we're moving on.
And Gina isn't alone. Several insiders who once worked for him have either retracted stories or faded from the spotlight. These were people who claimed to have seen it all, the substances, the intimidation, the endless stream of young women and paid performers funneled through hotel rooms like props, yet when it came time to speak under oath, many of them melted away. Is that fear? Or something deposited quietly into an offshore account? No one has been able to pin down the money trail, but the sheer number of voices that went mute is impossible to ignore. It's as if someone is sweeping the board clean before the final play. Meanwhile, whispers are growing louder about a so-called revenge list that has leaked from inside the prison walls. According to those close to his orbit, names of former associates, employees, and even friends are circulating, marked as targets for when he walks out. The idea alone has ignited paranoia. Former bodyguards refuse to speak publicly. Assistants have moved cities. Even industry veterans who used to party alongside him are ducking calls, worried that payback could come not directly, but through loyalists who owe him everything. Is Diddy's empire quietly preparing to settle scores? To strike fear back into those who dared to turn against him?
How you know to be hands-off with somebody. A number of producers come in and make the approach, and you threaten to punch them in the mouth, or threaten to knock their head off for talking to you like, or looking at you like you're a woman. You know, when you approach a real man about his masculinity, you're gonna get a real reaction back. It's a difference when a guy walks in a room and when a man walks into a room. And a man don't take the same things that a guy will accept.
The paranoia is real. One former road manager claimed he received a late-night call warning him to stay quiet or stay gone. Another insider insisted that names are being traded around like ammunition, with those closest to him preparing to protect their secrets at any cost. If the rumors are true, we're not just looking at a man escaping justice. We're looking at the rebirth of an empire fueled by vengeance. And the question everyone is now asking is just how far will they go to keep their world intact? And how many of those who dared to speak will pay the price for daring to pull back the curtain?
Interestingly, we haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic, evidence.
And now the bigger question stares us all in the face. How is this even possible? How does a man with decades of allegations, a conviction on federal charges, and mountains of testimony still have a clear path to freedom? It forces us to reckon with the ugly truth about celebrity privilege in America's justice system. Is Diddy's fame acting like a shield, deflecting the kind of accountability that would crush an ordinary citizen? Prosecutors have been blunt, calling the evidence overwhelming, yet somehow we're still talking about a potential early release. Victims see this as a dangerous precedent, and legal experts whisper that if Sean Combs can skate by, then every wealthy entertainer will be emboldened to test the same loopholes. We've seen this play out before. We remember when famous athletes walked out of courtrooms after jaw-dropping verdicts. We remember when movie stars served just a fraction of their sentences, returning to red carpets as if nothing happened. Diddy's case fits right into that pattern, another glaring reminder that money and power bend the rules. The Mann Act is supposed to be straightforward, yet his attorneys argued it was vague and unfairer, twisting it into a debate about lifestyle rather than accountability. Meanwhile, anyone else charged under the same law would be facing years in federal prison with no way out. If this isn't a system tilted for the elite, then what is?
This is the flight where Diddy said to her,
Showed her
she
the video.
testified
Showed her the
that
Freakoff video.
he showed her a video of a freak-off that she participated in and said, if you don't participate in another freak-off when we get to New York, I'm gonna put this video out. I'm gonna send it to your mother.
And that's coercion.
She testified
if it's true.
to that.
If the jury
they believed her, that's coercion.
That's
they would
The so-called freak-offs were never just parties. They were spectacles engineered to blur the line between celebration and control, a carefully constructed stage where Diddy's dominance was put on full display. To outsiders, these gatherings might have looked like nothing more than indulgence. Lavish hotel suites, endless bottles, glamorous guests flown in from across the country. But insiders described them as rituals where Diddy dictated every move, deciding who entered the room, who interacted with whom, and how long the night would go on. These events became a theater of power, reinforcing his role not just as host, but as the ultimate authority over every body and every moment.
Referred to me as Wild King Nights. And what a Wild King Night was when him and a guest would go to a hotel room or be at his home, his bedroom, and they would have intimate gatherings. I would have to go and prep that hotel room, which consisted of baby oil, Astroglide.
The scale was staggering. Prosecutors documented how planes were chartered, rooms booked in cities from New York to Ibiza, and dozens of people transported under his direction. These weren't spur-of-the-moment get-togethers, they were logistical operations, funded by an empire that blurred the line between entertainment and coercion. Participants were showered with luxury on the front end, only to be drawn deeper into a system where refusal wasn't an easy option. With reputations, careers, and sometimes even physical safety on the line, walking away was far more complicated than it appeared from the outside. The genius, and the menace of these nights lay in how they created dependency. For rising artists, assistants, or young hopefuls looking for a break, being invited into Diddy's inner sanctum seemed like an honor. But once inside, the dynamics shifted. Cameras were allegedly rolling, substances flowed freely, and the thin veil of consent often blurred into something far more sinister. The footage captured could later be used as leverage, a silent threat hanging over anyone tempted to speak out. These nights were not simply private indulgences, they were a mechanism of entrapment, binding people to him with shame, secrecy, and fear.
I'm sorry, I'm just really, I'm in this moment right now. This is crazy. Sorry. People don't really know how much what it does to you when something that you love is taken from you and thrown away like it don't even matter, and then they move on with their lives and you're stuck. You're stuck during those years. You're still stuck 21 years later.
The emotional toll was immense. Survivors described marathon sessions that left them exhausted, disoriented, and stripped of autonomy. What made it more devastating was the performance aspect, being forced to smile, to play along, to project an image of fun, while privately unraveling. This wasn't only about gratification, it was about dismantling resistance, about proving that even the strongest wills could bend under his direction. The longer these nights stretched on, the clearer it became that this was less about pleasure and more about control, a choreography designed to keep participants in line.
People I don't think realized was he had cameras all over the place, unbeknownst to them. And now he has all that footage, supposedly. This is what I'm told. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens if, you're a huge iconic, TV star or movie star, and you're in some very, very...
From a distance, the empire appeared bulletproof. The parties were whispered about in the industry, treated like an open secret that no one dared confront. They fueled his legend, adding to his aura of extravagance and dominance. But behind the glittering facade was a calculated pattern: lure, indulge, trap, and control. Each gathering reinforced the mythology of a man untouchable, powerful enough to bend the rules of both entertainment and law. The Freakoffs weren't a footnote to his career. They were the blueprint for how he maintained authority long after his music faded from the charts. That's why the possibility of his release alarms so many. If those nights were tools of control, what happens when he regains the resources to stage them again? Survivors fear the cycle could restart, this time with even more secrecy and paranoia. His empire was built in those hotel suites, fueled by nights that broke people down while building his legend up. To understand the danger of his freedom, we have to look beyond the surface indulgence and see these gatherings for what they were: a machinery of exploitation disguised as nightlife.
Why did he walk that back, do you think?
And let's not ignore the political backdrop. Reports have circulated that Donald Trump has considered a pardon. Imagine that, a presidential pardon for a man still entangled in dozens of lawsuits and a criminal conviction. For weeks, insiders whispered that meetings were happening, that allies of Combs were pitching his case directly to the White House. Trump himself even toyed with the idea, calling him sort of half innocent. These aren't just legal maneuvers. They're raw displays of influence at the highest level. If power like this is in play, what chance do the victims really have? What message does it send to every survivor still out there, debating whether to come forward? But the cracks in Diddy's empire tell another story. For years, his circle treated him like royalty. Employees, friends, business partners, they followed his lead, protected his image, and enjoyed the spoils of his empire. Now many of those same people have turned their backs. Cassie Ventura shattered the silence with her testimony. Jane, another former girlfriend, painted a disturbing picture of endless hotel nights and manipulation. Assistants and former staffers described how travel was booked, how nights were orchestrated, how no detail was left untouched. These weren't enemies, they were once his closest allies. Their betrayal in the courtroom was devastating, and yet, it may have only deepened the paranoia around him.
A former assistant to Sean Diddy Combs speaking out in a new interview with new allegations about wild parties and drug use.
Industry sources insist that what really haunts him are the leaks, the secrets that slipped through the cracks. One former employee handed over files about travel agents and payments. Another quietly confirmed that those infamous Freakoffs spanned from New York to Ibiza. Even Kid Cudi's name surfaced in testimony, tied to jealous rage that allegedly boiled over behind closed doors. For a man who built his empire on loyalty, seeing the walls crumble from within must feel like treason. But for those who spoke, the fear doesn't end at the courthouse steps. Already, whispers suggest some of them have gone into hiding, convinced that walking free will be his green light for revenge. Think about what that means. If there really is a revenge list circulating, then every one of these insiders lives with the possibility of payback. Some moved cities, some stopped answering calls, others refused to set foot in Los Angeles or Miami again. The paranoia is thick, and honestly, who can blame them? We've all seen how far powerful figures will go to protect their image. When silence can be bought and loyalty enforced through fear, the consequences of speaking out can follow someone for life. These witnesses risked everything, and with the possibility of his release, the stakes only climb higher.
Let's talk about the filth that's starting to come out in the early days of the Diddy trial. This, of course, is P. Diddy. Surprise, surprise, he's a creep. Surprise, surprise, he's done horrible.
This isn't just one man's scandal anymore. It's a mirror reflecting the broken promises of justice. If Sean Combs can walk free despite the testimony, the footage, and the endless list of accusers, what does that say about the system the rest of us live under? Are we really supposed to believe justice is blind when fame, wealth, and political connections tilt the scales so dramatically? For the survivors, the haunting question is whether justice will ever truly be served, or whether their pain will be brushed aside as just another chapter in a celebrity's messy biography. And here's where we leave you. One thing is certain. This story is not finished. If Diddy does step out of those prison gates, the real drama may just be beginning. Will he rebuild his empire, or will the ghosts of betrayal and vengeance consume him? And more importantly, if he can walk free after everything we've seen, are any of us safe from the power of money and influence? Tell us what you think in the comments below. Will Diddy's release spark chaos or redemption? Until next time, stay sharp, stay questioning, and remember, the truth always finds a way out.